So I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation real quick, and we're going to get right into it. Um, this first slide, I always love starting with this slide. This is an artist named Ever from Argentina, who it was painting in 2013. This is over on Anderson Avenue. And I just loved the full body expressive nature with which he paints. He's using brushes. He travels with this bag full of gigantic, oversized brushes, and it's as much performance to watch as it is the final product. Final piece of creation on the wall. But wall therapy. Whoops, let me get to the right window. My name is Erich S. Lehman. I'm the co-curator and lead organizer for Wall Therapy. I also like to say I'm just the main kitten herder to make sure that everything gets done. We were largely a festival-based project. We've shifted, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. In the picture, this is from 2014, where I don't just push paper behind the scenes. I get up on the lifts with the artists to help out when I can. This is a mural over off of Main Street at the Feder Building. That's about 4 stories tall and was a bear to get done in time. Wall therapy itself, we are, to read a little bit, we're a public community level intervention using mural art as a vehicle to address our collective need for inspiration. This is the heart. Right, this is the reason we started, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about it. But at the core of what we do, we started with mural art as this main end product, so to speak. But as we've been doing it since officially since 2012, the trial run was 2011. We have allowed ourselves the ability to flex and adapt and try different opportunities as they come up and as they make sense with our mission of just trying to get back to the community and let them know someone cares. The first couple slides are the only ones I have a lot of text on, trying to get all the specs out of the way, and then we get to look at the pretty, the fun stuff. But over the last, however many, 12, 13, 14, almost 15 years, we've officially made over 168 murals throughout the city. The actual number is a little bit more because we don't keep track of what the folks do in their off hours. Whenever they come, this is just the ones we officially pay for. We have brought in over 110 local, national, and international muralists. We are a project that's part of a nonprofit called the Synthesis Collaborative. And at the heart of that project is bringing medical care to underserved communities. And at its inception, Wall Therapy kind of was a bit of a marketing tool. The idea was, it's obvious it's got its heart, its project, but this was the appetizer to talk about what the real projects were and what the real work was being done by Synthesis Collaborative. And it just took on its own life and spirit and grew well beyond what our founder envisioned. But it was important for us, to bring in international artists so that we could have conversations and get attention so that we could have these other conversations we wanted to have. But then it was as important for us to make sure local artists were represented in the works we did. And I always often use the band analogy where the touring band, comes in and they might have a local opener, and then they become friends. And then the local opener goes on the road with them, and you have all these new opportunities. It's about making connections. And we have plenty of local artists who have built fascinating, successful careers. Some in case making more than I do, just making murals, which is like the greatest, success story we could hope for. And then Yeah, just as a nerdy little tech, at this point we've probably used over 5,000 cans of spray paint, and probably it's up over 700 gallons of bucket paint, 650, 700. And that's, if for those not familiar with the term bucket paint, the paint you buy at Lowe's and Home Depot and Sherwin-Williams, they come in a gallon or 5 gallon. And as an interesting note, um, a lot of artists over the last 5 to 7 years have been shifting more towards this, the bucket style paint, um, just for environmental reasons. Didn't want to use the all the extra chemicals used for the spray paint. So they've been shifting, and I think as techniques and styles evolve, you're seeing this big change in what's possible and at such huge scales. So it's been very exciting. I did want to bring this. It's a second picture of our map it's available on wall-therapy.com, just to show the breadth. We actually have murals the whole way up in Charlotte, down by the lake, and we go this far down as Shotland YMCA. But the majority of our work is centered around downtown. It was for a couple of different reasons. One, we had a vested interest in trying to be part of that revitalization of downtown. We want people to go downtown. We want people to not be afraid to go downtown. But as a fun sidebar, the city of Rochester itself doesn't regulate paint on walls. They regulate advertising. And as long as we don't advertise, murals you can pretty much do with a lot of flexibility. So it was a little bit out of just opportunity with that is, and and as you try and work with murals into more suburban areas, there's more rigid planning and a lot more hoops to jump through to get through that. So it was just kind of this confluence of opportunity to say, like I said, we were invested in doing something more to draw people closer to the heart of the city and not, kind of address a bit of that suburban sprawl, but also just allowed us to kind of work a little faster and take care of opportunities as they arose. Our project is almost entirely supported by community. At this point, we've raised a little over $3,000 through community crowdfunding and grants to the project. And then with, as a joke, Ian and I footing the bill for the rest, trying to fill in those gaps. For us, it was very much about how do we make this mission happen? How do we make the thing happen? But for most of our festivals, it was largely funded by crowdfunding opportunities where we're able to work with local artists to, they either donate or make perks for us that would then be offered up. And we were able to raise a lot of money through the community in order to just give right back to the community. One thing that I always love to bring up is for the years that we were really doing the festival, and there's an option. It's 2013, 14, 15, 17, 18. We won, the Rochester City Paper's Best of Award for Best Art Exhibit. And I like bringing that up because one of my personal missions is to break down the walls between people and art, right? There is, as you look at just the roller coaster of how society interacts with art, there is still such a conception that art is only for people of money or people of influence, like the higher ends of society. And, it's my own personal experience as well as others. It's like, no, art's for all of us. And what better way to get art out in the community is, paint a mural and then say, oh, you like this mural by so-and-so, artist named Days. The mag bought a painting from him and you can go in there. You should go see what else is in there, and trying to make those connections and break down those walls. So to me, that's a great testament that the idea was working. And then for the years that was offered this idea of best group improving the community, we were up, alongside some very awesome groups that are doing incredibly important work. And so to get these awards was really important to me to say, like, yeah, we're we're doing something. We're doing it right. People see what we're trying to do for Rochester. Uh, at the heart, right now, we have a core team, about 5 volunteers. It's at our biggest when we were doing these crazy big festivals. It was up to about 10 or 12 people that would be meeting weekly to make the thing happen. In 2022, that was our last proper festival for a while. While we shifted to a project base. Because part of us, we're all getting older. It was a little tougher to kind of take off all the time it needed to get a festival going. But it also allowed us more flexibility to take on projects that we weren't able to do because we're planning for this giant thing, and it was creating conflicts or things like that. And from there, we've had an expanded team about between 50 to 75 volunteers who, for the larger festivals, we're juggling 75 volunteers who just took vacation time or took a day off, or joined us on their day off, to just help be part of the project and get that experience, which was very much, like I said, really important to all of us to do that, to make sure people felt like it was theirs too. Very quickly, we have global reach. People all around the world tune in to see what's going on in little old Rochester, New York. And it was really important because when we started 2012, the other thing that was in the news was Kodak going bankrupt and Xerox, going bankrupt, like all these horrible things going on in Rochester about Rochester stalwarts. And by the end of the summer, all of a sudden there's all this information happening and being shared about this art that's happening in Rochester. So it was really, really great. And then we've had just a lot of coverage. People are paying attention to what we're doing here. This mural here is from 2012. It's by an artist from South Africa named Faith 47, who was instrumental. She was the first street artist who signed on to Dr. Ian Wilson's vision, which is a great little segue. So at the heart, this juxtaposition right here. So on the left, you have two small boys watching an artist named CERN paint on the Avenue D Rec Center on the El Camino Trail. And Ian started the project. He is a transplant. He's originally from East New York, which is, if you think about when I say New York City and we all think of Manhattan, to the east of it. And when he was growing up, it was the late 70s. Okay. And I always say, if you've seen The Warriors, he literally is like, yeah, no, sadly, there were some areas where I was where this was absolutely what was going on. And he was telling me how, he used to go to the train yards or they'd go to the courts and they'd see, the rise of graffiti as we know it, right? You have the stuff that started in the 60s, which was really just writing a name on a wall. And then in the 70s, you have this change, this transition to more of the graffiti style that you think of when I say the word graffiti now, bubble letters and more artistic, more colorful. And in 2010, when, through his life and career, as he was doing a residency at Strong, and he's an interventional radiologist by trade. And he's watching the news, and there was this spate in 2010 of youth on youth violence and crime and homicides. And he's like, what can I do to impact any kind of change? And he thought about how important those murals were, the graffiti and stuff was to him as a kid. It was a place for his respite. So, in that, it took him about a year of discussion, and making connections, because at the time, social media was very early and it was very innocent, and it wasn't, the horror show is today. It was a way for people to share ideas, see what's going on. And street artists especially were very protective of their identities. They did not go by their government names. It took a lot of trust and being vouched for to make a firsthand connection. And, so, we'll talk a little bit more in a second, but what I love about this juxtaposition is that in 2013, we brought the other gentleman sitting next to Ian, Chris Ellis, he writes Days, who's one of the first graffiti artists in New York City who exhibited in galleries. and was one of the people who Ian was going to look at their graffiti, when he was a kid. And so kind of come full circle and bring days up. And, Ian is very much that little kid in that moment, of getting to be, you'll work with this person who was so influential to him as a kid. And, this, like this moment, the number of photos that we have of just kids, little kids watching people paint and watching people who look like them paint, which is really, really important to what we do. So now we're going to look at, whoops, let me get in the right window. Whoops, the murals. So I'm going to give you like a really condensed run through of a couple key murals that we have, that kind of tell a bit of the story. This first one, the Believe mural, which is over on Troop Street. And it is the word believe written in graffiti letters, and in between are a mix of local and international artists from South Africa who got together. And ultimately, this was the core. Before a certain city decided to make it their slogan, we were out there writing, telling people to believe in themselves, and we take it as a sign of we must have been onto something. But the idea is like believe in something, please. Believe in yourself, believe in your family, believe in your community, believe in your future, but please believe in something, because we know you're going to do great things. From there, and this was, like in our first time in 2011, it was called Visual Intervention. We didn't come up with a nice short name, but it's the idea of like, we're going to use visuals to intervene in our community and try and make a difference, positive difference. Whoops. I love bringing this one up because it's so very Rochester specific. This is an artist named Gaia, who's at the time was living in Baltimore. The title is Commerce Moves Swifter Than Culture. And this is on Southwich Planning Association's building down off Mount Hope. And it is a representation, it's supposed to represent Xerox copies, where not every image, it's you have Mercury, you have Chase Tower, I forget what the other building, I can't quite see what it is. But you have this repetition of these three images over and over again. And every once in a while, some are darker, some are lighter, some are not as perfect, just like a copy machine might be. And in the last slide, you have, just an unnamed black, probably early 20 something gentleman, White Sox hat kind of pulled down so you can't really see his eyes. And whenever we ask Guy, a guy would get asked, like, what's that all about? And he's like, oh, this is for the person who will never get their portrait painted. This is for them. This is so that they know we're paying attention. We see you. This a year or two later is it's a pattern rug by Jesse and Katie, also out of the Baltimore area. And what they do, they paint these beautiful geometric patterned abstract murals. And when we were trying to find something, we were basing our project on the El Camino Trail, in part of our project in 2013. And we looked at the bridge over 104, and they had never done this before. This is the first time they ever painted on the ground. And they're like, can we just paint a giant rug along the entire path? And so this, I think, about 114 feet long. Still there, a little beat up. There's a lot, some bike skid marks on it over the years. It's getting worn down like a ground rug would. But it's that idea that art does not have to exist on a vertical surface. It can be everywhere. This is a mural that unfortunately is now gone. It was on Avenue D and Joseph. It was a mural by Laika Nunuyawar. At the time was going by Lunar New Year, or LNY. I Am Yo Soy. And it was painted at a corner that by day was very mellow. And then around 4 o'clock, the local drug dealers would kind of come out, hang out. And everyone was very cool, never had a problem. But the idea Lenny had was creating something that just spoke to the journey of the folks in that neighborhood. And so on the left, you have a small child who actually lived in that building at the time. And then in the middle, on the third column, you have Trayvon Martin, who had just been killed a few months before. And then you have a young Frederick Douglass and an old Frederick Douglass. And it was kind of this idea of examining what is our path from youth to old age, what are the possibilities, what may happen, what may not happen. But I just love that juxtaposition of art, message, and location. And I'm really sad. It's a really ugly blue now. I wish they'd kept it. We also love just having interventions throughout the city on old architecture. This is a mural by an artist in Jarvis from Canada called Avery. And it is a young woman he met while he was here. He's like, "Hey, would you like to be on a mural?" And there's a very funny backstory behind that one. But he almost moved here. He fell in love for a moment. But this is over at the Feder Building on this old abandoned processing plant. It used to be a beech nut processing plant silo. And we love just the interaction of nature overtaking, coming back, reclaiming its space. Jarvis would paint murals like this on the sides of trains. So if you were up in Saskatchewan, where he was from, or anywhere in Canada, you may see the traditional bubble letters when you're at the railroad stop, and then all of a sudden this gigantic, beautiful mural of a human being goes by, and you're like, how was that painted in the middle of the night on a train? But yeah, just recontextualizing our city. I mean, this is an artist or a mural by Sarah C. Rutherford as part of she's a local artist. And she, after a few years working with us, started her own project called Her Voice Carries, where she was, spent 2 years interviewing influential women in the community of Rochester, selected 5, and then painted their mural, very themed around who they were in their interviews, and they painted them in a different area of the city. And the idea was, if you wanted to go see the mural, the person that has impacted you, you're going to go to a different neighborhood. You're going to learn about that neighborhood. And much of the way, if we call back to the mural map, the idea is it originally started like, let's just see if we can do this. And we weren't even sure it was going to go beyond a year. And as we expanded, it became like, let's turn the city into a free 24/7 public art gallery, so that art is there for everyone. But fantastic story about Trelawney. She's a total force of nature. And in the interest of time, I won't be able to get into as much as I'd love to, but please feel free to follow up on any of these stories. This mural by Todd Stahl, who's a local art teacher at Webster High, that he painted with 6 or 7 of his AP art students over the summer. This is his first mural ever. And it was on surfaces that on the back on Pennsylvania Avenue, on the back of the public market buildings. And the beat up nature of that one garage door is so much in tune with the assemblage work that he does in his studio practice. But this mural called Feeding the Machine pictures a young Syrian girl and a young Syrian boy's hand. Todd had become really interested in this Syrian photographer documenting children and the impact of the Syrian war on them. And so this mural is all about that. It's about the impact. And he actually collaborated with that photographer to get some source photos that he could then use for this mural. And it's still so beautiful, so powerful. And so please, definitely go check it out. Jumping ahead, 2019, this is another local artist, Brittany Williams. Through tragedy, there's hope. And we were approached by Moms Demand Action in I think it was like late 2018, early 2019, about helping facilitate a mural for Gun Violence Awareness Month, which is June. And orange is the color. That was kind of our only thing we had to do. And so this is at 810 Genesee Street. And Brittany actually grew up in this neighborhood. And so it's really important to her to bring something back. And much like Gaia's person, this is an amalgamation. This isn't any one person. It's a made-up person who represents those we've lost to gun violence. And this is right down the street from the Boys and Girls Club, where the initial shootings that inspired Ian to take action happened in 2010. So it's a very much a full circle moment. And while we were painting that, the number of folks who came up and was like, "Oh, this reminds me of my cousin, my son, my brother," just someone close to them, the way it impacted them directly, and yet even kind of using this generic approach, just made such a simple portrait so powerful to the community. And it was just such a beautiful project to be a part of. This one is down in the MLK Junior Plaza downtown. This is Triumphant Music, and it's a very colorful rainbow spectrum portrait of living Rochester-based musicians who are still performing. You have Moses Rockwell, Danielle Ponder, and Michaela Davis, painted by Brittany Williams, Sarah C. Rutherford, and Justin Suarez in the summer of 2019. And the idea was, so many times, mural tributes are for dead people, people we've lost or memorializing someone. And the idea is like, let's their pitch was, let's paint living artists by local living artists and really make it of the moment. And because MLK Park is such, once the weather turns, there's music there all the time. There's action, life, activity. So it's such like this perfect juxtaposition. This mural was from our 2022 festival, and just another cool way of working where we worked with a gentleman named Levon Shepard, who has been so instrumental in Rochester's art scene. He's been teaching for over 52 years at RIT. He taught my friends, back in the day when I was an undergrad. And I had this. This is one of his buildings, and he has a Joy Gallery right down the, a couple blocks from, or a couple doors down from this wall. And he was talking about how, like I had started working with him more over the last few years, both at my day job and then through the art scene. And he's like, "Man, I really wish I could have just done a mural." It's in hindsight, I wish I could have. And it got me thinking about this artist named Ephraim Gabre, who from Rochester, but at the time was working out in New York City, painting these beautiful. He worked for a thing called Colossal Media at the time, and had just started kicking out on his own, where they make these beautiful photorealistic advertising murals. And Ephraim and I had these conversations where he's like, "I have trouble coming up with ideas, but I can paint like a champ, paint like a fiend." And I was like, "I've got this idea. How do you feel about being Levon's hands for him?" And we pitched the idea back to them, and they loved it. And so Ephraim picked this. This is a painting from 1989, I believe, 87 or 89, of two FMS workers from RIT. Oh, 89. It's right on the slide. And it's a watercolor painting, one of Levon's watercolor paintings. And so Levon went there, made it, and then to make sure that Levon was also part of it, there's a little courtyard right here. Is down in the Susan B. Anthony neighborhood. And we did a watercolor workshop with Levon, so that, he wasn't just he was an active participant in that. It was so well attended. I was sad because I was putting out fires elsewhere in the city during this project, so I didn't get a chance to stop in. But it was just an awesome experience. Moving ahead, I want to talk real quickly about what we've been up to, because in 2022, once we switched the festival, they're talking like, "Oh, Walt Therapy's dead," and we're like, "We're not dead. We're just shifting. We're evolving." And last year, we were really fortunate to get a 99, a very nice grant from NISCA that was part of this project called the Charm Initiative from Governor Hochul's office. And they picked 11 partners throughout the city, or throughout the state, to make murals. And it paid artists well to do what they do best. And so we were chosen as part of this project to help facilitate. And it was a partnership with the City of Rochester and Rock Paint Division, and Sarah and Justin and Francesca Diaz, who are all run that program for the city. And it's a 2-part mural over on the Carter Rec Center on like 500 Carter Street. And it's called Fly Away Home. And, you have this juxtapositions of hands creating a nest, with young hands and old hands and birds flying in. And then the other part of this specific mural is a mother with her small child. And Sarah had just had her first child like 3 months before this, I believe in June. And so she was just, working on this new concept of motherhood is very much of mind. And then you have this just beautiful juxtaposition of these two murals on the corner of Carter Street. The other part of that project, the murals, were some murals led by Francesca Diaz called Sprouts over on the Sully. It's on the Ryan Rec Center, but the Sully Library. And just these visual pops of color. We're going to revisit Sprouts in a second, or Sully in a second. But other things we did last fall, we had a show with MCC's Mercer Gallery, called The Writings on the Wall, and we invited back any local Rochester-based artists to be part of the show. We had about 21 of the 30 total who were able to be part of it, and it was great. It was like a little reunion, and we did an artist talk with that, and ran from November to December. We also brought in one of our other artists from 2013, an artist named No Hope, Adam Yekatuele. He had just had a documentary come out called The Abstract and the Very Real. And he is based in Tel Aviv, and he does a lot of work with Palestinians and has done a lot of work in Gaza. And while it was originally the documentary was supposed to be about like his journey, like that was the initial intention from the documentarian, it really also became this discussion about what's going on in Gaza, what is not being said locally there, and just the disconnect between the realities of roughly 1 hour away from where he lives. It's incredibly power screening that we did over at Visual Studies Workshop. And I highly recommend it if you can watch it, to watch it. And that brings us to what we're working on right now. We are working with the city of Rochester on a project called Centering Youth. And this is in collaboration with the City of Rochester Teen Empowerment and Flowery City Arts Center. And it is a multi-year project. We just, after talking about it for a couple of years, we're just starting to do real stuff. And the idea is in one of our early meetings, we're talking to, we were watching a video, and there's a youth in one of the neighborhoods going, why, there's a neighborhood of the arts. Why can't we have a neighborhood of the arts? Why can't we have the arts in our area? And we kind of latched on that. I was like, well, why don't we? Why don't we make these art parks that center youth, center what they're going through? And so our pilot project is going to be at Ryan R Center, which is where the Sully Library murals are. And for the last month, we've been meeting with this group of youth, kind of representatives from Flower City and Teen Empowerment and the Ryan R Center, and talk about like, what do you need? And it's the themes are safety and security and a place to connect with and create community. So we are, they're driving the ideas right now, and we're kind of putting this to a presentation we're going to do in a couple weeks, and go from there. But this will be a multi-year project, and if it's successful, the goal is to put more of these throughout the city. So it's very different than our usual murals, but it is at the heart, helping youth just go on. So in the interest, I realized I had a bunch of other slides, and I'm running out of time. I tried the best I could, but I'm going to zip ahead, talk about people. For us, it is always about the people, and I'm going through a number of slides. Just each one of these has great stories, but I wanted to get back just to the slide where we have these ways to find out more. Always love having opportunities to talk about what we're doing. We have the website. We have links, YouTube videos that cover all of our projects, and of course the map that shows where everything is. I know we don't have much time for questions, unfortunately, but if anyone does, very quickly we could pop into something. But otherwise, please feel free to reach out. Any contact information off the site will get to us. There's only a couple of us watching everything.
Thank you, Erich. This has been amazing. You have a birthday greeting in the chat. Is it your birthday?
Oh, tomorrow. I'm looking at the wrong window. I'm gonna stop. I don't see the chat because of the stop share. But yes, tomorrow is my birthday. So thank you, whoever said that one. I
It's
appreciate you.
Tom
I'm gonna.
Myers. Happy birthday from
Oh,
Tampa,
hey Tom,
Florida.
thank you so much. Yes, yes. Um,
Great.
there you go. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And yeah, we've just evolved. We're doing different stuff, and we always need people to help, especially as we're moving into this next phase. We're gonna go into some uncharted territory for us, which is really exciting. It's really fun.
Amazing. And if artists were interested in being involved, what would they do?
Just contact us through the site. We don't have a form, just emails.
Yeah.
We can kind of go from there.
Yep.
And then we have a roster of, I've got a folder of everyone's stuff, and we just kind of who makes sense um, for the project. We try and give as many people opportunities as we can.
hmm Amazing. Amazing. Any questions before we finish?
I have one.
Yeah.
I love muralists and mural art. But in Kingston, New York, and
Mm,
I find that a lot of this type of can cause gentrification.
yep.
It can cause because the beauty of a community causes gentrification when
Yeah.
there's beautiful arts and all that. How do you manage? Because I think a community, though I live in a gentrified place, but
Yeah. Yeah.
ironically, I think a community should change in a more
Or-
wholesome way, not
yeah.
in a
Organic
very,
way.
yeah. And
Yeah.
how do you balance that out or try to
Mm,
work and I love your community. I mean, the
mm.
last project you're doing sounds amazing, incorporating the
Yeah.
youth. That is like
I, I
spectacular.
I could talk
Um,
about what that just for the last 6 weeks, it's been insanely powerful to be part of. So interesting time. You know, one of the things we've got a pretty good nose for sniffing out people who have ulterior motives.
mhm.
We and I've had people who have straight up like, why can't I get a free mural? I'm like, yeah, okay, we're done. The conversation's done. We're trying to work with stakeholders from the community who are already there, who are living there. There's so many conversations that we have before a mural goes up. First year we learned a lot of mistakes. We made a lot of mistakes, learned a lot of lessons. But since then, we do surveys about what is in the area, what's going on, who might be impacted by this. Talk to people who are near the wall. What businesses, schools, religious centers, etc. Like who will be living with this mural? And it's a, a long process, and I'd say I feel so far that none of the stuff we've done has really impacted that. We have rules like it can't be hidden, it has to be accessible 24/7. If there's a gate, sometimes there's a really good wall that behind a gate, can you still see that mural with if even if the gate's closed, things like that. So a lot of it is just it's vetting, I guess, to say is who our partners are, and
Hmm.
you know a lot of it is, like I said, it's a feeling, it's a sense, checking references and just trying to make sure, as especially as we got more and more involved in the project, that the people we work with, their vision aligns with what we're trying to do.
Hmm.
And there's only so much you can control, but where we can, we're gonna try and put those safeguards in,
That's very
to
helpful.
keep
Thank
it
you.
as safe as possible. Yeah, but
You
it's
understand this. Yeah.
in a word, it's about communication and about vetting, and trying to do your research about who it is you're trying to work with. So,
Hmm.
and that goes down to the artists too. I mean, I'm a big art collector. I have artists I would love to work with, and I was like, you are not a fit for what we do, and that's just that. So,
Amazing. Thank you so much.
thank you,
Yeah,
everyone.
look forward to learning more and more about it. It's so great. And thanks everyone for coming. We have a in the chat there's the rest of the today's schedule and tomorrow, and hope you will come back. Thanks everyone.